Hey, I'm Seth, and this is Radical Health. There's one aspect of healing that is very common out there. It's very important, and it happens to be the topic of today's show, and that is addiction recovery. When a drug addiction gets bad, it turns into dependency and abuse, and it starts to negatively affect the user and the people around them. If you feel that you are in an abusive relationship with a particular drug or substance, or even emotion or relationship, there is help out there, and I encourage you to seek it. There's a mantra in addiction recovery that says, you can't do it alone. And so luckily, there are groups out there, networks in every city. There's Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous. There's groups for children and family of addicts. There's all types of support groups out there who have developed very clear tools and techniques to help us recognize these destructive patterns in ourselves, recognize what fuels them, and how we can get ourselves out of a cycle of harm. So today, I'm happy to introduce a friend of mine who's going to talk about his story, his relationship with alcohol. He breaks down the 12 steps and some tools and techniques that he has developed personally to help him stay on a healthy path. So I'm happy to introduce a conversation with my friend Andy. Thanks for listening.
Hey, how's it going?
Excellent. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for asking me to do this.
Yeah,
this is pretty cool.
So you have a podcast. It's called Recovery Friends.
Yes, everybody has a podcast.
But yours is really good, and I like the content because it's all about recovery.
Yeah.
And actually, as I was writing questions, I was wondering, do you prefer the term sobriety or recovery, or do you use the term sobriety, or?
It's funny because I thought about this recently. I tend to default to I'm sober.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people who are sober default to I'm in recovery. Which, I mean, if you ask me if I'm in recovery, I definitely say yes, I'm in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I don't prefer either one, but okay. I tend to say I'm sober, I'm in sobriety, or I don't know why. That's just like a word that I chose early on, and that's what I use. A lot of people like to say I'm in recovery to like let people know that I'm recovered from like active addiction and active alcoholism.
Because you could be sober but have never done drugs before.
Exactly. Or you could also, I think there's like a lot of people in sobriety like to like categorize.
Yeah.
There's dry. I'm dry if you're dry. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it's also kind of funny. If you say you're dry or somebody's dry, it means that they're just not using and not incorporating any tools into their life to like overcome some of the isms that we have that, make life hard to live. Drive us to drink and stuff like that. So it's like or white knuckling. People say white knuckling, it's like whenever you're just like holding on to something dear life and your knuckles turn white.
Yeah.
Some people say clean.
I heard clean was sort of a taboo term because it implies that if you're doing drugs, you're dirty. Some people choose not to use that and actively tell you, oh, you shouldn't say clean because it implies dirty.
Yeah, I guess.
How do you feel about that?
I don't feel any way about it.
Okay, cool.
you know?
So going back to the term in recovery versus sober, are you saying that in recovery is like an active, like it's a conscious form of healing from your addiction?
Yeah. I think, when we say recovery in 12 steps, the 12-step universe, we mean you've worked the steps, and then you actively continue to work the steps, the 12 steps of whatever program. They have so many programs that incorporate the 12 steps into into their path. And I think and there's also this there's the idea that like an active alcoholic or somebody in active addiction suffers from an obsession of the mind. So it's like I have this body that once I receive a mind-altering substance, wants more, right? And And the only way to arrest that is to not use, right? You give it enough, as long as you don't put it in your body, it doesn't activate that. We call it the phenomenon of craving. But then there's the obsession of the mind. They call it the peculiar mental twist. And it's like a 2-part illness, right? Mental and physical. And it's that mind that no matter how many times I go through the process, no matter how many times my bank account goes in the red, no matter how many times I manipulate money out of my parents, no matter how many times I blow up my life, right? I always find a reason or an excuse to justify or to convince myself to use, or that to convince myself that maybe this time I'll just use a few. I'll just use this weekend and have fun. Right. I'll just have fun this weekend, and then boom, off to the races again. Because what did I do? I activated that phenomenon of craving.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's very psychological, like this game of recovery.
Yeah, it's they call it moral psychology. In the 12, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you what, time out, because I'm getting very AA-ish here.
Right.
So I should say this: like I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and for anonymity purposes, I won't divulge my last name here. And I will also say that I don't speak for AA. This is my experience working the 12 steps and trying to live a sober life for 9.5 years. And, some of it is opinion. A lot of it is opinion, and it's what's worked for me. And a lot of it is definitely consistent, but I want to make sure that it's understood that I don't speak for any 12-step program.
Absolutely. And if you listen to Andy's podcast, Recovery Friends, that's something that he, lays out as a disclaimer in the beginning. Definitely recommend checking out Recovery Friends. Where can people find that, by the way?
So most podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, I use this app that just distributes it to like a bunch of different platforms. I mean, we don't have a large audience, but I was looking the other day, and there's one episode that has like 400 listens, so that's like a benchmark.
Yeah.
but yeah, wherever, it's a small thing, and it's something that I like, that I found very, when I first got sober, I remember feeling like I couldn't connect with people. I don't even know that I couldn't, because there wasn't a lot of attempts. By the time I needed to get sober, it was me drinking at home, in bed, a lot of times alone, very depressed and suicidal, and all that. And when I finally like got to the point where I had no choice but to go into like long-term treatment, but I didn't feel like I was ever going to make any meaningful connections with people. I would mourn the friendships of my youth, in high school, and like how close we were, and in my adult life just seemed very lonely. And I remember my first job at a grocery store. It was a very humble job. I was stacking fruit at a grocery store. My first job out of treatment. And my sponsor's girlfriend would shop at this grocery store, and she would come through the produce aisle, and we would talk about recovery. And I remember those conversations feeling so magical, like talking about like the process of what, of taking in this like huge leap, and all the things that were being revealed to me at the time. And those are the first like real like conversations that I'd had that were meaningful in any form for a decade. Before that, I mean, honestly, there weren't many conversations, period.
Yeah.
When I say I was isolating and drinking alone, I legitimately was isolating and drinking alone. I drank with my roommate, and we would talk about things, and they were. But there's this other level of conversation. I feel we call it the language of the heart. In recovery, what we do is we identify with each other, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful thing. It's like you come in and you say, you know what? I did this horrible thing. And then somebody else says, me too.
Yeah.
Right. Or not even that. Like, I have this horrible thing that I'm hiding.
Yeah.
And somebody says, hey, I did this horrible thing. And you go, shit, that's the same thing I did.
Right.
Right. And they're not carrying shame. And they're walking with their head high.
They're showing you how to let go of it almost.
Yeah. And instead of feeling like this like uniquely horrible human being, you go, oh, we're all kind of the same.
Yeah, so conversation seems like it's an essential part to recovery and healing.
100%. Yeah. We talk a lot about like synthetic knowledge. It's a part in the big book, and I read that thing a lot with other people, with other guys. And I got to thinking about like synthetic knowledge and how like if I just read something, right? It doesn't. What's the word I'm looking for? What's the example? The right example is what I'm looking for. It's like, let's say
You can read about how to repair a bike, maybe.
Exactly. But you don't know until you have the experiential knowledge.
Right. And I always think about the word understanding.
Yeah.
Because you can understand like intellectually how to fix a bike, but until you actually go through the process of doing it, that's when you're actually standing under the building, basically. Yeah. So to stand under, to put yourself in that position, experience is the knowledge, or
that's
experience is the education.
Exactly. Right. And I think that's a lot of what we talk about with alcoholism and recovery too. So there's like, I could tell you what heroin feels like, man, but you don't know.
Right.
I could say it's euphoric. I could say it makes every problem that is weighing you down disappear in an instant.
So that's synthetic knowledge.
That's synthetic
for me, because I've never done it.
Yeah, I mean, and look, this is my take on synthetic knowledge too. Like, this is what I take from when I read the big book, right? So I have experiential knowledge because I've done it, right? I should clarify that I've never done heroin. I've done every form of opiate except heroin. But you know what I'm saying? That's the example. So then again, also with recovery, I can tell you about the 12 steps and how they change your life.
Yeah.
I could tell you how looking inwardly and looking at the worst parts of yourself and how like making amends to other people and admitting your faults to another man, paying back all the money that you made, trying to develop a connection with something greater than yourself. I could tell you how all of that is amazing and how it changed my life. And that's great. And maybe you hear me and you go, that gives me hope, but you don't know until you actually do it, right?
Totally.
So I can't like intellectualize all this. It's all about like taking action.
And that's why I'm having you on. And that's why I want to bring on experts and people who are experienced in what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Because then you can, once you walk the walk, you can talk the talk.
Yeah. And I'll say this, no expert here.
Okay. Yeah, let's not use that, but you're experienced. You're 9.5 years into the recovery game.
Yeah.
By the way, when is your 10-year?
So I got sober February 8th of 2012.
Cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to call you February 8th,
hey, if you
2022.
Remember, bro, give me a call, say hello. I mean, it's an interesting day. And, every year that passes, I find myself weirdly depressed. Or just, it's just like you get very contemplative, I think also no matter how much I say I don't, I'll place expectations on a number of years and where I should be and how I should feel, and where I think like the things that I think I should have by this point.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good to be reminded that that's not what it's about.
It's more about the one day at a time, right?
Well, 100%. It's about staying present.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about doing the next thing that's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also hard. So for example, you could believe or be told a million times, and you can believe it that having $1 million isn't going to make you happy, right? You hear people say that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You understand it intellectually, but secretly, you know those $1 million are going to make you happy, right? Like underneath, you're like, it's going to make me happy if I get the $1 million.
Yeah.
You know? So there's that, like, it's actually kind of a cool letdown, right? Because it shows you that the commodity doesn't fulfill you. The commodity isn't going to like complete you. In this case, the years are the commodity. You know,
Right.
they're that benchmark that once this happens, I'll be okay. Once
Yeah.
blah blah blah, I'll be okay.
Right.
And then achieving that, and then finding out, oh, of course, this isn't the answer.
There's no like pot of gold at the end of the rainbow after 10 years.
There's not. And like I said, sometimes I feel very grateful, because I do get contemplative.
Mm-hmm.
You do get your friends, saying, hey man, congratulations. You do go like to a meeting and get recognized for your year. Sometimes if you go pick up a chip or something.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I feel very grateful. And in some years I feel a little depressed,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just because recovery is up and down.
Yeah.
Life
is too.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like life. Exactly. I shouldn't just say recovery. Life is up and down.
Yeah.
And sometimes that day catches me on a down.
Yeah.
You
All right. Now, how do you feel when you're in a meeting and somebody else hits their 10 year? How does that make you feel?
Somebody else hits their 10 year. I mean, I guess it depends. Whenever I was early in recovery and I'd see somebody get 10 years, I thought that was an impossibility. Because, I'm coming from a place where I can't put a few days together for the better part of a decade.
Yeah.
Right. And to see somebody get 10 years is kind of overwhelming to think of, too.
Yeah.
Especially in early recovery,
It seems unattainable.
It seems unattainable. It seems like it's overwhelming to a degree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think nowadays, I generally feel happy for the person who's getting it.
Yeah.
I feel also weirdly validated to see that it's working. That the path that I chose is working for other people too.
Cool.
And I'm also reminded that it works for other people too, because as much as I'll go around saying this thing works, I'll often look at people and go, oh, he's not going to get it.
Yeah.
Not proud to say that, but like seeing other people get it reminds me to go, bruh, like you were hopeless too.
Yeah.
Like you're a miracle also.
Yeah, that's cool. And it shows you the experiential knowledge that person has now. Like they experienced it, they went through it.
Yeah.
There's no theory about it.
Yeah.
And again, it's all an individual journey. Like that person did it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And they're not speaking for AA or representing that structure as that person did it. Obviously they had the help, they had tools and everything.
Yeah. We like to say nobody does it alone, and that we can't do it alone.
Oh, okay.
That's what I love about recovery groups, because I think that's like one of the most powerful things about it is the fellowship.
Yeah.
Is, again, the connections that we make with other human beings.
Yeah.
Because again, the identifying, right? The thing that removes the illusion of separateness. We feel connected to each other.
Yeah.
And your listeners might have heard this before, but have you ever heard that that experiment? Is the experiment of the rats?
Okay.
Which experiment of the rats?
It's about 1 million.
Out of the million.
Yeah.
Well, so there's like this. There was this experiment. The guy puts a rat in a cage, and he has a feeder in the cage, and in the feeder he puts cocaine. And the rat, once he realizes that this water has an effect, he keeps going back to it like crazy until he dies.
Yeah.
Right? And the conclusion there is that, give the rat cocaine, he'll get addicted and kill himself.
Right.
And that the cocaine is the thing that we need to keep away from the rat or whatever, right?
Yep.
The cocaine's the problem. So then this other guy came along, I think later, saw this experiment and thought it was flawed and thought he'd try it differently. He takes a cage, a larger cage this time, and he places, I don't know how many, 10 rats maybe?
A community of rats.
A community of rats. And this time he has 2 feeders, right? And in the cage he has like, a little water pool and some, some stuff to recreate their environment.
Yep.
And 2 feeders, one has cocaine water, the other one doesn't. And in this environment, the rats hardly ever touch the cocaine water.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so how do humans take that study and apply it to our world?
Well, the conclusion was, right, is like that the opposite of addiction isn't like,
Absence of drugs.
yeah, isn't exact. The opposite of addiction is connection.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's pretty powerful.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that seems like a core tenet of AA is the human connection part.
For sure. 100%. We call it depth and weight.
Can you explain those terms?
Well, it's very hard for me to explain it, but so and this is kind of I wouldn't say unique to like alcoholics and addicts, but the thing is like, when somebody's consumed with addiction, there's very little things, if any, that are powerful enough to make me stop.
Yeah.
Right? Or to hold my attention. If my mom crying as I'm walking out the door, begging me not to leave, it hurts, but hey, I got to get loaded, right? Mm-hmm. It'll interest me. It'll get my attention, but it won't hold it. The fear of where my life was heading, it would grab my attention, but it wouldn't hold it.
Mm. So is that like the depth of?
Well, so this is more the depth of one alcoholic working with another alcoholic. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about like, once an understanding is made that this person is like me and understands me, but somehow is sober, right?
Yeah. Like
that interests me and it holds me.
Okay.
Because I'm also making that connection with you.
Yeah.
And now, granted, like even that's not enough to hold me forever. I have to take action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
a lot involved in it. So that's one of the biggest components is that first connection you make with somebody who you identify with.
Yeah.
And you go, oh man, I'm not alone.
Yeah. And I think we can do that in all aspects of healing, whether it's food or drugs or injury. It's like the more people we have to kind of help us and connect with and talk to, the easier it's going to be.
Yeah.
So how far along the recovery process did you start your podcast? Because it seems like you said you learned that a conversation with another person really helped, and it was like you never really had those conversations before. So when did you realize like, oh, I could like record these conversations and put them out there?
So I guess so. I got sober in 2012, and I would take these bike rides, and so this is around the same time. So I would like on my days off, I would just take these long bike rides, and I'd put some headphones on and I would listen to like Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
I would listen to this other podcaster I really like is Duncan Trussell.
Yeah, he's funny.
Yeah, I would listen to a lot of like Ram Dass lectures.
Yeah,
Alan Watts.
That's what we connected on. I think when I came in and we met, we had a mutual interest in Alan Watts and Ram Dass. And like speakers, like long format podcasts and stuff.
For sure. And I would just put them on and I would ride forever. And this was actually, I mean, Rogan had been on for 3-4 years at that point, but he wasn't that big. He wasn't
right. He's not where he was now.
Yeah. And but I remember thinking, man, this is fucking nice. And I was like, these are 3-hour-long conversations, and they're just free form.
Yep.
I remember thinking like, this is great.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
And so like I would have these conversations at the and the conversations with my sponsor's girlfriend were like they just stuck out to me because one, I was like, I'm like newly sober. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And then like she's being so kind to sit there and have a conversation with me about recovery. The most important thing that was going on in my life, those conversations stuck out. But I was also having those conversations with many other people that were going through the same thing with me, right? And then also, going to meetings and hearing people, because that's what you go to. You go to a meeting, somebody shares their experience, and the point of that is, again, so that the newcomer, me, at that time, can go, oh yeah, I'm just like this person. I can heal too.
Yeah.
This sounds like something I can do as well, right? And I remember thinking, man, somebody should definitely put this into some podcast form.
Yeah.
And so I went and I bought a microphone and an interface, and my roommate and I, and then I had another buddy of mine who kind of knew how to work GarageBand. We were like, oh yeah, we're gonna make this podcast. It's gonna be cool.
Wait, can I ask how many years into your recovery was this?
This was about 2.
Okay.
About 2 years into recovery.
Okay, cool.
And at this point, I'm really ramping up, like how I'm a little bit fanatical, if I'm honest.
You're pretty psyched on the 12 steps and stuff like that?
Yeah, because my life was like radically changing.
Yeah.
So like the time I'm having these conversations is about a year prior to when I finally get the gumption to go buy the mic set up and everything.
Yeah.
So we set it up. We have a friend over. I even record a couple of my buddies a few times, like test trial runs, and I got fearful. I got fearful. I started thinking like, this isn't going to be looked upon favorably by my community. And because there is there's a tradition, and it's called it's something about like keeping anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. That one of the biggest principles of our community is anonymity, and people have different opinions about it. But there are these traditions that were created over years that kind of hold our groups together and keep AA kind of running, and they're based on experience and things that have happened and things that have gone awry and things that have been put in place, to ensure the health of Alcoholics Anonymous, so that people who want to come in and get sober can find AA.
Yeah.
So I had all these like fears about people going, this is going against the rules, Andy.
Did you ever ask anybody in your group about it?
I did talk to some people about it, and I found that most people, but the thing also is I was talking to people who were also like not very experienced. So I was running it by them, and they were like, I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah.
And so for whatever reason I got fearful, and I kind of just stopped, also feeling there was the feeling of like, who am I to start a podcast?
Yeah.
Who am I? Who do I think I am?
Right, yeah. I don't have followers.
Yeah, like people are gonna laugh. They're all gonna laugh at you. So those fears, right? Those and as ridiculous and silly as they sound, they were there.
Totally.
And they kind of paralyzed me for a minute. And I kind of just put it on the back burner, and always thinking like, this is something that I'll do at some point.
Okay.
Fast forward, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So it was like 2 years sober, and then it was another 4 years before I actually said, screw it, I'm just going to record one and see what happens.
Cool.
And release it.
Sweet. So yeah, it took you a few years once you bought the gear and tried to start. Took you a few years to finally go, no, I'm doing this. This is right. I feel good about this. Let's just have a conversation and see where this goes.
And I did run it by people.
Cool.
Like this time I was like, well, I might as well if talk about this fear to people, So and I ran it by people who I thought would not have a good opinion about it too. And there was mixed mixed reviews about it.
Yeah, I bet.
I love doing it. Honestly, it's very cool to do, and it's very healing for me.
Well, so that's really interesting because, this podcast is called Radical Health, and we're talking about healing. I think, recovery and sobriety is a huge part of healing. And it seems like the conversation is an essential part of that connecting to others is an essential part of that. So it's cool that the podcast might be like a really nice tool for you in your recovery journey.
Yeah, it's a privilege, or it's the other word that not many people have, like a podcast itself.
Right.
But recovery in general, this is when it's one alcoholic talking with another one, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, and that's what the 12 steps are. It's like, I've been through this. Let me take you through it. Let's meet once a week.
Yeah.
Let's read this book. We'll talk about the step 1, step 2. We'll do a step 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go through each one and talk about. I'll do that. And just kind of talk about how it maybe heals for me, or it healed me.
Cool.
So I think you hear people say a lot, and I agree, which is it's a tough pill to swallow. But for anybody who is like a chronic alcoholic and drug addict, you hear a lot about having to hit rock bottom.
Right.
And I think that there, with what we know and the information that we can provide now, the bottom can be raised, so to speak, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be necessarily under the bridge.
It'll be different for everybody too.
It is very different for everybody, right? And that's why a lot of times it's important for me not to compare my insides to your outsides, because it's really about how we feel. And it's really about like the disconnection that we have to I'm going to say the word God in here. So
great.
To God and to other human beings.
And quick caveat for any listeners who quote unquote don't believe in God, just define God as the universe for now. That's been my working definition that helped me understand what God is for myself. So if you're like, I don't like that term, it makes me feel weird, I don't believe in that, just think of God as the universe, all that there is.
Yeah. And that's kind of what, that's kind of where I started.
Yeah.
And I mean, and honestly, like, I don't know that it has my conception of God, which is a step we'll talk about, has evolved, but it's still very simple. And I just have to believe really that I'm not God,
right?
First and foremost. So step 1, right? It's admitting defeat. Admitting defeat. And unfortunately, a lot of times we have to be pretty well defeated to get to that point to admit defeat. Right?
Yeah.
Step 1 is I'm powerless over alcohol.
Okay.
And when I looked in my life, I really couldn't disagree. I couldn't stay away from it, no matter how hard I tried. And that's just the honest truth.
Yeah.
Right? On my own, no matter how many different attempts and how much I threw at it, I never could stay away from it. Mm-hmm. Even though there was a long time of my active addiction where I knew I had to. And then the second one is once I put it in my body, I'm powerless against how much I'm going to put in my body. So I never knew where that was going to lead me. And it didn't always lead me to a crack house. Yeah. Sometimes I went home.
Yeah.
Sometimes I blacked out and drove home. Oof. So, sometimes I stayed up all night and woke up in places that I didn't want to wake up in.
Yeah.
So I never knew exactly what was going to happen. Like
Gotcha.
If I went out and so powerless, right? I had to give up the idea that I was going to be able to control and enjoy my alcohol and drugs. There was no way I was going to do that, right? I couldn't control it. Mm-hmm. And if I was trying to control it, I couldn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right? There was no enjoying too. So, but then also I had to give up the idea that I, on my own, could control my life. And, there's like when you say that, it feels disempowering to a sense. Like, and I think people can go like, "Oh man, that's just, you know, I don't believe that."
Right.
And I get that. What I mean is, you know, like I have these tendencies that, left unchecked, are very selfish and self-centered and are very me-centric. I see the world from my perspective. Why? Because I'm seeing it through these eyes.
Yeah.
Right? So this makes sense that I only see the world through these eyes, and I think that the world kind of revolves around me, right? And I'm very selfish, and I need to get what I want when I want it, right? So I try to control my environment. I try to control the people around me. Now, it may not be like I'm yelling at you to fucking do what I want you to do. It's a lot of times it's, hey man, I'm really nice. You know, you've met me, right? I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm easy to talk to. And so that's kind of my tool to manipulate. That's my tool.
Interesting.
That's my tool to get what I want. Now, I'm not always consciously doing this, but it's just how I am, right? That's the way I navigate through the world. And a lot of times, me trying to control the show, it doesn't usually go the way I want it to go. I can't control the world, basically.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying, right? And the principle of letting go is like a big one for me. It's like, let go, control, have faith, right? In what? I don't know, but just stop trying to control everything.
Yeah.
And I have found that principle is super effective at life just going a whole lot smoother than it does whenever I'm trying to like make sure that everybody's happy or that everybody likes me or that everybody's doing what I want them to do, you know, so I'm powerless over alcohol. My life is unmanageable. My life is unmanageable because every time I try to manage it, it leads me back to alcohol. Because whenever I try to control it, I usually find it objectionable. I get depressed. I get angry. I get resentful. All those feelings lead me back to the drink. So I'm waving the white flag. And that's the first time that I've actually, in a long time, humbled myself and said, hey, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Right? And that's very powerful. And until you have that experience, right, until I honestly believe, hey, I can't do this alone, the rest of the steps are going to seem like a fucking mountain. And I'm really never going to really buy into them. So step one is a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Surrender is a prerequisite. I'm letting go. I'm giving up. I'm letting go of the wheel. I'm like this with this one thing, right? Because there's a million other things in my life at this point in my recovery, you know, day one that I'm still trying to control.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to hold on to all kind of old ideas and ways. But in this one instance, and this is how powerful that principle is, I can take one thing in my life and go, I let go control, and boom, I have a spiritual awakening of sorts.
Something opens up.
Yeah, something opens up, exactly. So step one, right? Surrender. I'm in the worst spot of my life. Okay, I might as well do these steps, right? And there's this window, you know, and my friend Anthony likes to say, I've got this window when I first come in where I'm like, yes, I can't do it alone, but it's rapidly closing.
Okay.
Right? It's closing rapidly. If I don't take action quickly, it's going to close, and then I'll start going, you know what? This ain't so bad.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I was overreacting a week ago where I was like, I'm gonna surrender.
It's that window of inspiration. You gotta just go for it.
You have to take the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's like the universe presents me with doors. There's this web, right, of things, and it's being orchestrated by something that I don't even know how to understand it. And it goes, here, this is a path that if you take, and then if I don't take it and it closes, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be more coming ahead.
Right.
That wasn't the only path, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, that's not the only window, but also I don't know that I'm going to get another window, because to get to that point of desperation where I'm going, yes, I'm willing to do this, every time takes a lot of pain.
Yeah.
For an alcoholic and an addict. So step two is, okay, I can't do it. Step two is came to believe in a power greater than ourselves. you start talking about that, people have a lot of hangups.
Right. Yeah. Which is why I like to define it as either nature or the universe, because that's what helped me. I was a devout atheist.
Yeah.
That's kind of an oxymoron, but I was like a staunch, proud atheist because I could rationalize the non-existence of God. I really was just fighting against the Christian church. I saw what they were doing, and I was like, this is crazy. I don't, all the wars that are fought in the name of God, I was like, that's not God.
Yeah.
So this would help me get around to the conception of God as saying, just call it nature or the universe. So as you sub that out, everything makes sense.
It does, because you can't look at the universe, you can't look at nature and go, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
This is wild.
Yeah,
and
it's inconceivable in a way. Look at the stars.
And so clearly all this is a power greater than me.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Because I'm only just a small part of this infinite thing.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly this is a power. So you could start there. And really, honestly, you don't have to move any further than that. That's enough, I think.
Yeah.
Like we talk about belief in God and a power in ourselves and how it evolves and it develops. But that's enough. And there are people in recovery who still are atheists.
Yeah.
Decades in the program. So you don't have to believe in God. It's just also believe that there is something greater than you. And
Totally.
that obviously that you're not God, right?
And that's a very important step, it seems, because it's the second one. It's very early in the 12 steps.
And it goes along with the idea that, like, I can't control everything.
Right.
You know? That my life is unmanageable.
Because if you think you control it, try controlling nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's impossible, right? A lot of people choose to believe that, like, the group conscience is a power greater than themselves. Like AA as a whole is a power greater than me.
Totally.
That principle for me was extremely important because I was raised in a cult till I was 5.
Interesting.
Weird shit happened in the cult. My parents weren't super religious, through the rest of my childhood. But there was a lot of there was a lot of Jesus and God, and I didn't mind it. But I always had that weird thing about being in a cult, knowing that weird things happen. So and then as I got older, I started developing this idea like you about the Catholic Church and all the crazy things that have been done in the name of God too. All those. So I tried to go to church in my early 20s. I did a whole got saved thing. Mm-hmm. Went to church for 6 months. I was I got really involved, and then left with a bad taste in my mouth from it.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was that, part of me that was kind of man, screw these people. And then those 6 months I had stayed sober. I had this sneaking suspicion that if I were to get sober, that something like God was going to have to be part of it. Mm. So every time I try to get sober, I'd be like, I'd go, well, but I can't go back to that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the only option.
Religion?
That specific religion.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so it's old ideas. We talk about a lot about having to set aside our old ideas and set aside what we think we know.
Yeah.
I had rejected this old idea of God, but I was still carrying him with me.
Yeah.
I didn't know that if I wanted to form a relationship with God, it didn't have to be with that old idea of God that I had rejected long ago, but I was still carrying him with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it can evolve.
Yeah, it was just it was in the back of my head telling me, well, you're going to hell, or if you know what I mean. If you don't believe this, you're it was still there.
Interesting.
Quiet, but there, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea of God sounded horrible because I thought it had to be this God.
Yeah.
But in Alcoholics Anonymous, they told me I can have a God of my own conception.
Beautiful.
And I went, what? And that really did just bring down the wall for me, right? And I could start very simply. I thought that I had to have a defined idea of what my God was. Well, my God is the Buddhist and whatever the fuck, right? I had to, and again, what am I trying to do there? I'm trying to control. I'm trying to control God.
You're attached to your old conceptions of it.
Exactly, right? But I still want to have like a firm grasp on what God is.
Yeah.
Right? And the truth about it is that God really comes to me whenever I say I don't know what God is.
Nice.
You know what I mean? So that principle in AA was just like your own conception. And
Cool.
And you would talk, you talk to anybody with time, and they'll still say, I don't know who God is. I don't know what.
Yeah, but it's a power greater than yourself. That seems to be
that's very simple.
Yeah.
The only thing is that like what happens is that the word God gets used a lot,
Right.
and there's old language because it's an old, program that was like we still read the same book that was written in 1939.
Okay.
So the language in it can be a little off-putting. I tell people to like take it and not place so much value on the words that we're talking about here, and that we can replace words like, if it says God, use universe.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Some people can't get past the language.
Right.
Step 3 is about God too.
What's step 3?
Step 3 is turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him.
Okay. So it's more about surrendering, not just knowing that there's a God.
Yeah,
but
it's actually
actively
actively surrendering. And so like that, when you say that, you're like, well, how do I do that?
Yeah. I don't know.
How do I understand what God's will is?
Yeah.
That's almost impossible.
Right.
I'm here, right? The universe has led me here. I'm in the middle of this process of the 12 steps. Maybe God's will is for me to finish this process. It can be that simple, right? By this point, I'm working with a sponsor. So I go, okay, so this is the person that's been placed in front of me. Maybe since I've been managing my whole life, if I were to like hire an assistant to manage my life, manage my affairs, right? Mm-hmm. And she kept like letting my bank, paying my bills, not transferring money over, letting my bank accounts go in the red, not paying my parking tickets.
Yeah.
Right.
Be a shitty assistant.
I would fire her.
Yeah. You're done.
Right. So, up until this point, that's been my job.
Right.
I've been so not that I'm gonna hand my finances over to my sponsor. That's not a thing. But it's also like in life in general, like maybe I'm ultimately going to make the decision, but maybe, just maybe, before I take a big action, maybe run it by somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe go, hey, I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about marrying this chick I met in rehab. What do you think about that?
You might offer some really good perspective.
Yeah, because what if I'm blinded?
Yeah.
I'm blinded by selfishness and self-centeredness. I'm blinded by what I want, right?
Right.
I see cute girl sober. We're both so passionate about this.
Right.
We're gonna stay sober and happy forever.
Yeah.
You see,
infatuation, lust, maybe.
Yeah, a little bit of delusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in early recovery, because the thing about it is that when you live your life living on instant gratification, and then you remove the thing that gives you instant gratification, the mind still thinks that life works that way.
You have to like rewire your whole brain.
Yeah.
Almost.
The mind still thinks that, oh, yeah, this is it. So you're still, I was still taking actions in early recovery based on that. Like there's an easy button that I can just hit and everything is better, right? That's drugs and alcohol. I've been conditioned to think that life is like that. I've conditioned myself.
Yeah.
Right. So I still have all these ideas of how the world works. It's important that maybe I involve the people that the universe has put in my life, right? And take this path that tells me I'm going to have a spiritual awakening.
So that's step 3, taking the active role in letting God
Yeah, manage your life.
Okay, cool.
Basically.
But then you were talking about letting a sponsor also help with that. So how does the human interaction fit in?
Well, again, if I believe that God is everything, and I believe that, like, you know, and this is also my personal belief. I think, again, I'm not speaking for AA, but I believe you're in my life right now for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So it's the principle of doing the thing that's in front of me, trusting that the universe has a better idea of which direction to take than I do.
Cool. And I want to take apart the word will, because you're talking about God's will. English is a Germanic language. And in German, the word will, or they pronounce it will, but it's W-I-L-L, means want.
Will.
Yeah. And I remember I was in Germany, 16 years old, German exchange trip, getting drunk for the first time.
Yeah.
And I ordered 151 at some bar, and then to the female bartender, and she tells, like, the guy pouring drinks, 151. He pours it and he goes, "Wer will das 151?" Like, who wants the 151? Like, who do I give this to? And so I'll always remember that, like, will means want. Will is want in the Germanic language. And that's really what kind of will means. So, like, God's will is like, what does God want? What does nature want?
Oh, yeah.
Does nature want you to be fucked up all the time? Does nature want you to be a healthy human?
Well, nature wants me in harmony with it.
Exactly.
Right? It's really, yeah, that's I like that, you know? So ultimately it's like, what's going to bring me in better harmony with nature, with the world, with the universe, right? With those about me.
Yeah.
And the 12 steps enable that, right? Because first I have to clear out all the shit that's been building up for years, right?
Yeah.
So then, all right, I'm gonna make a decision, because the next thing is like I launch into action, which is like which is a very long, it's pretty long inventory of my life, written.
Is this still step 3?
This is 4.
Oh, this is number 4. Okay.
This is step 4. So I look back on my life, and it enables me, the way it's structured enables me to see the truth, and because I come into sobriety incredibly delusional,
Right.
about things, right? Because I don't like to think that I am a deadbeat son. I don't want to believe that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to believe that I was an abusive boyfriend.
Yeah.
Right. So I tell myself these things, and even in these situations, I'm behaving this way, but I'm not honest with myself about it, and it becomes a thing that I truly have told myself, and I believe that I believe, like I was talking about earlier, I believe that I was really a nice guy who just was humble and loved everybody, right? And that, like, I just needed to get rid of this pesky alcohol, and once I remove the alcohol, I'm gonna be the man, the hero of the movie,
Right.
When I get sober, I realize alcohol was just a symptom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The true thing was that I was selfish and self-centered.
And then so step 4 is about taking the things you might have been delusional about, but then actually being honest and writing them on paper.
Yeah.
And then you can look at them.
Well, yeah, that's super powerful. There's something that happens in the act of taking it from brain and writing it out on paper, right?
Yeah.
There's something about that action.
There's something about that action, like, as it's going down. And then also, once it's there, it sits there.
It's
still
staring
there.
It's staring you in the face.
You can't replace that thought with another thought.
Nah, that's it.
Or replace that with some drugs. It's like, no, that paper's still going to be there. You have to fucking light it on fire to make it disappear.
Yeah.
But that
But you
reality
can't,
is still going to be there.
Yeah.
Your past is written in the Akashic record.
And it's the first time that I've processed it in my mind too, because look, so there are these things that whenever I got sober, I was extremely ashamed about too, right? These things that, like, I couldn't lie to myself about, that I knew that I had done, and I knew that it was selfish, and that there was a lot of things that I was like completely fooling myself about, but there were other things that were like, you know, just that I felt were horrible that I did, and that, the thought of them drove me to drink. I couldn't even bear holding them in my consciousness for longer than a second.
Oh, shit.
Right?
That's real.
And I have to write them down.
Yeah.
I have to write them down in step 4. But the process of it makes it very easy to just do one step at a time, right? So
Yeah.
So you're writing it down with the prospect of like reading it in step 5 to somebody else.
Right, and if you start your recovery process with writing things down, maybe that's putting the cart before the horse because you haven't done the previous prerequisites of getting there. That's why there's steps. That's why
exactly right.
Yeah.
First, I have to surrender and believe that I'm fucked because if I don't believe that I'm fucked, writing these things down on paper, I'm not gonna do it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
So cool. It's an incremental.
Exactly. There's a reason why they're in order.
Yeah.
So step 4 is kind of like, and there's an order in which you write it, right? So it's like, so a lot of times the people I'm mad at, right? So so there's a resentment in part of the inventory where I write, I'm pissed off at Seth.
Yeah.
So you write Seth, and then the next column you write why. Well, he told everybody I was a bad bike mechanic. And then the next column is, what does that affect?
Okay.
It affects my pride. It affects my self-esteem. It affects my ego, which I think all those are related, right? It affects my pocketbook.
Yeah. Hurt your business.
Yeah. My security. My personal relationships, it affects to a certain degree.
Yeah, so it allows you to take stock and be honest and
right. So like,
Yeah.
what about what you said is where does the fear come up? And in all those areas, right? Pocketbook, even my sexual relationships, right? Because if you're out there like, spitting on my name, maybe it comes back to me and people, whatever. It affects everything, right?
yeah, everything.
So that's 1, 2, and 3. Those are the first 3 columns. And then the 4th column, where was I at fault?
Maybe there's a reason why I said you're a bad mechanic.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And there probably is, right? I probably overlooked something. I was probably in a rush.
Yeah.
I wasn't being thorough in my work and I wasn't paying attention. I was, whatever it was, right? Or it could be maybe I was talking shit about you.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, like I go like, well, you know what? I was talking shit about Seth, and maybe he found out, or even if you didn't find out, where am I at fault? Dude, I talk shit about that guy all the time. Who the fuck am I kidding? Right? Like, it's like I eliminate all the previous columns, right?
Yeah.
And I just look at myself.
Oh, that's cool. That's a cool structure of step 4 because just writing down, Seth said this, it doesn't get to the heart of what you did.
Exactly. And the only way that I'm going to heal, if you're the problem, then I'm fucked because I can't do anything about you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I'm the problem,
You can fix that.
I can work with that.
Yeah.
So I can take all these reasons and excuses for why I'm the way I am and why I do the thing I do and use them till I run my life into the ground, right? Or I could take ownership for the things that I do.
Yeah.
Even if you were wrong in talking shit about my mechanic work.
Right.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's besides the point. That whatever. What's great about that is that it brought up some things that I need to look at.
Totally.
So 4th step is that I start looking at my life and myself.
Okay,
right?
cool.
I do that. I do a fear inventory, and I look at all the areas of where fear has been affecting my life.
Yeah.
And how I behave whenever I'm fearful, if I'm relying on myself, and then how I behave whenever these fears come up, or if I'm relying on HP, higher power, right?
And to me, it seems like anybody can use these steps. If it doesn't have to be alcohol, it could be if you're addicted to food, or if you're addicted to relationships, or sex, or TV. Even. I mean, I don't know. Like it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't have to be addiction. I think you could use these steps to
Dude,
to
they're
just take stock and
incredibly useful for anybody who wants to work them.
it's like a mirror that
Yeah.
that you can hold up to yourself.
But if I wouldn't have run my life into the ground, my ego wouldn't have allowed me to go through this process.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
like, because I'm not here
It
to
would
say,
still be in control a little bit.
yeah, I'm not here to say exactly. I still need to hold on to the illusion that I'm the hero of my movie. You know,
Yeah.
because I'm not here to say that I'm some kind of virtuous person that, you know, does this work and looks itself, and I can't really say that, right? I squandered a lot of years. I did some things I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
My life got unbearable, and I was left with little choice. What a blessing.
Yeah. Because that opens the door, man.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Well, like, what a blessing. I wouldn't say that I would do it all the same, because there are people that were hurt along the way,
Right.
but I'm glad, I'm grateful for that dark night of the soul that I had.
Yeah.
That propelled me forward and gave me that window,
Yep.
right? And gave me the willingness to take advantage of that window.
Yeah.
And my life hasn't been the same ever since. Step 5: read this to another person.
Okay.
So, and then
Share your past.
exactly. And also, so there's the fear, there's the resentment, there's the fears, there's the sex inventory. So I inventory all my sexual relationships or romantic relationships, or just we call it the sex inventory, and it is about like sexual relationships and how selfishness and self-centeredness manifest in those relationships. And then at the end we do a nooks and crannies, because and the things that, like, you know, those things that whenever I would think about, I couldn't hold in my consciousness for a second, right? So at this point, 4th step, I'm writing them down. 5th step, somehow, some way, I am able to tell another human being about it,
Yeah.
which already is a miracle.
Yeah.
Into step 5, that's already a miracle, because
How long does it take to get to step 5?
um
And is it different for everybody?
it is. You know, it took me a month to finally sit down and write my 4th step, because
Okay.
it was, my ego was fighting me every step of the way. It was painful to sit down and do it, and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not have, you know. And then, like, reading, you know, my sponsor would come to I was in a long-term treatment center, so he would come once or twice a week. We would read for an hour.
Okay.
So and that's how we do it. We go along the book. So it took probably like 3 months to get to the 5th step, I would say.
Okay.
And again, first time I ever like am that vulnerable,
Yeah.
you know, and that open.
It's like teaching you like emotional health at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So all of this process is teaching me how to live
Yeah.
in a healthy way.
Cool.
You know, and have healthy relationships.
Beautiful.
You know, then 6 and 7 are you work them kind of quickly, because like 6 is like became ready to have all these defects of character, because like you make a list of defects of character whenever you do a 4th step. So it's like became ready to have all these defects of character removed. It's basically so it's like I don't even really know exactly how to work that step in general, if I'm honest. You know, I think that 6 and then 7 is like ask God to remove them.
Okay.
So those are like you work them really quickly. You know, you
Okay,
say
cool.
you say you're ready. There's a specific prayer that you say. It's boom boom. But I think the principle of that is that like I am acknowledging that this is not gonna be something that is magically removed from me.
Yeah.
It's that this is like this will pop up again. Like my lust is gonna give me problems in the future. So like I acknowledge and recognize that this is gonna take time and work, and that if it pops up again, it's okay.
Cool. So more honesty, but maybe less grueling than the first 5.
And they're quick, you know?
Yeah.
And I do believe that 6 and 7 are basically they encapsulate all the steps that I continue to work for the rest of my life.
Cool.
Because character defects don't disappear.
Okay.
Then step 8 and 9. So 8 is I make a list, right, based on this 4th step of all the people. Like, because once I look at all the people that I was resentful at, and I look at where I'm at fault, I realize, oh shit, I probably should make amends to this guy. I should probably make amends to this person. And the sex inventory, oh yeah, that ex that I was really kind of like mentally abusive to, you know. Depending on the situation, you don't always run to the ex-girlfriend and make amends.
Right.
I should make amends to her. And then, this shitty thing I did that I was like, beating myself up for years to this person deserves an amends. So you make an amends list, write out blah, blah, blah. And in step 9, you go out and you make those amends one at a time.
Cool.
And this process is, I mean, it's pretty powerful.
I imagine it's really hard to kind of be like, oh, I'm about to have a really tough conversation. Like, I hurt this person, da 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 da.
Yeah.
But then again, the process of conversation, and being honest and being maybe sorry, you know, and vocalizing that,
and vocalizing it, and not just being sorry, but being willing to make it right.
Okay.
You know,
and does AA give you techniques about how to do that?
Yes. One, it says don't say sorry.
Oh, okay, cool.
Well, we say that. I don't know if
I'm learning so much right now.
Yeah, I don't know if because you know how many times did I say I'm sorry and I didn't, and it was meaningless.
Right.
It's more, you know, Seth, I wasn't very thorough when I worked on your bike, and I left. I didn't tighten that screw. You could have been hurt, and you don't deserve that. You deserve a mechanic who's going to be thorough and take this job seriously, because you know this is a serious thing. You're getting on a machine. You're going down the road with cars. Your safety at stake. You don't deserve that. How can I make this right?
Cool. So asking the person, letting them speak.
Exactly. And also it's like, you know, maybe if I owe you money, right?
Yeah.
I'll go and look here. I want to give you the money back for the repair because obviously I didn't do it right.
Cool.
That's an amends. And then go, and is there anything else that I left out? And what can I do to make it right? And whatever you say, as long as it's not go stab your mother
or stab yourself.
Yeah. Or something crazy. And again, I'm not to be the judge of the validity of what you tell me. I go, okay, if I think it's a little crazy, I'll say, maybe I'll talk to my sponsor about it before I say, screw you.
Right.
So you go about like that and you go one by one.
Wow.
And also, you know, it's like, it's incredibly healing to do that for yourself, but it's also super healing for the other person.
I imagine that. Yeah.
You know? And a lot of times you find that it's even more healing for them, and you're repairing relationships.
Totally.
You know, broken relationships. And it's just beautiful.
That does seem like a very powerful step.
It is.
That's
It
cool.
is. It is.
What's the next one?
So 10 is continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admit it. So it's just continuing to be thoughtful, continuing to look at where my character defects maybe create conflict in my life or with the people around me. It's also to look at where I'm doing well in life, and look at where like maybe I was kind. Look at maybe where I went against my nature to do something selfish, or you know, it's not just like flogging myself in the back.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's like directions of like, if I, you know, I'm at work and maybe I yell at my mechanic, Micah, I go, okay, so when this happens, I pause, right?
Take a breath.
I'm obviously out of control of my emotions.
Yeah.
So I pause. That principle alone is super powerful. Stopping, taking a breath, not saying the thing that you want to say. You know, maybe leaving the room or something. Asking God to remove it. Call somebody. Tell them about it, make amends if you need to make an amends.
Mm-hmm.
So come back in and be like, dude, look, you didn't deserve to get yelled at.
Yeah.
That's not the way I want to be. And you know, I apologize for that. You don't, you know what I mean? Make
Cool.
amends.
Yep.
And then, so it's like a kind of, it's the whole, it's kind of like the steps in one step.
Yeah.
And then turn your attention to somebody you can help. And so that's boom, that's 10.
Okay.
So it's always like, we're always trying to incorporate service in some way, you know,
Cool.
to help somebody else. That helps me get outside of my mind, of myself.
And then to bring it back to what we talked about earlier, it helps you break down the illusion of separateness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. And then step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God.
Cool.
Yeah.
I
So
like that.
it's developing a nightly practice, developing a morning practice, prayer and meditation. You know, you get a lot of people who are down with the prayer but not the meditation, or down with the meditation but not down with the prayer. It's both. You know, and for me, like, I like to think of, because prayer for me is like, I don't have to think that I'm talking to something even.
Right.
But whenever like I word it out, like I think it out in my mind, there's something that happens there. So it's also like the whole writing down stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like a feedback, personal feedback
Yeah,
loop.
exactly. And I think that there's something to that, to prayer, you know, active like mouthing and saying. And then meditation's just amazing because it makes me incredibly good at pausing.
Yeah.
Or it makes pausing a lot easier.
And for those who have heard the word meditation but don't exactly know what it is, give me a super short definition of meditation.
Just trying to focus on my breath, trying to focus on sounds, breathing. It's something that is able to bring me to the present moment.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah. And kind of override my monkey mind.
All right.
And my emotions. And then step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening, we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics. So it's all about turning around and giving it back. And that's it. And it's a loop.
Yeah. Are you someone's sponsor right now?
Yes.
All right. How many people can you sponsor at once?
I mean, you know, I don't know that there's a rule.
Yeah.
There's a...
More about personal capacity.
Yeah. And again, I also think that for me with that, I think it's like, I've never had to say no to somebody who asked me. There's a natural capacity that happens. It's, you know, sometimes I'm working with a lot of guys, sometimes I'm working with a few. And what's unfortunate about the whole situation is that most people don't stay sober because not everybody's to the point of desperation where they're willing to walk through that window before it closes.
Yeah. So now let's say someone is listening to this and they feel like they're at that point and they want to, you know, they heard the 12 steps and they like the structure and think they might help them. How do they get involved? Where do they go?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you are in this city, which is New Orleans, there's a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings.
There's a lot of alcohol in the city.
There's also exactly. So it's like with where there's a yin, there's a yang. You know what I mean?
Yeah. so wait, but how do you find them? Like I walk around, I see bars, I don't see it because it's anonymous.
It is anonymous. So I mean, you go to the website. It's AA.org. Google AA. It's pretty, you know.
Okay, cool.
Use a search engine.
Nice. Okay.
Or
cool.
there's NA. There's also there's CA, Cocaine Anonymous. There's a lot of anonymous programs.
Yeah.
And
So
you can find them online.
Yeah.
They always have a list of meetings in your area online. The time, the place. They're typically held at churches.
Yeah. And nowadays they do them on Zoom, right? Especially during the COVID thing.
Yeah, they also have a lot of meetings on Zoom. And so they have some meetings that meet in person and also Zoom the in-person meeting. So yeah, it's not hard to find if you want to find it.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I really need to change. If you're there, you know, I was there. I really didn't think that I was ever gonna like turn my life around. and this process has changed the way I see the world, the way I see myself, and has really just completely shifted the trajectory of my life. And I believe that this process can do that for anybody if they're willing to go through it.
No, I mean, the way you described it and broke it down, it seems like, I don't know how long it took them to develop this thing, but it sounds very thorough, and it's like, it works.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's for another podcast. I could go into like some of the history of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll have you back on. I mean, I wanted to ask you about bikes and and some of the other tools. Like, are there any other tools that were unique to you that you developed on your own to kind of help you in your healing journey? I think we talked about the podcast,
definitely that's a thing,
How did bikes come into your life? Was this before recovery?
No, this was post recovery. So when I got sober, I went into treatment. One of my cars got repoed because I was using it as like collateral for a payday loan, and that I never paid back. And I had two vehicles, not because I was balling, because it was a happy accident.
Yeah.
And then my other truck went kaput on me as soon as I got out of treatment. So I had no means of getting around. So I started biking.
Okay.
Kind of fell in love with it, and the rides were really therapeutic. And then at some point, I'd worked at this thrift shop for a while, and I would see people like restore older things, and they were making a living out of selling them, and I just thought that was so cool. And I was like, man, I would love to do that. So then whenever I quit this thrift shop, then I started thrifting, scooping bikes, and I even started trying to like refinish furniture too.
Okay.
And then just reselling them. But I did start finding that like that kind of work of like sitting there and working with my hands very meditative.
Yeah.
And then like restoring something from like being like basically junk to some of the bikes just turn out beautiful. And I guess in a sense it could be kind of metaphoric for
I was
like
going to
my
say,
own life.
is that not a metaphor for what you did with yourself?
Yeah, to a degree. So I've never actually put those two and two together. Maybe there's something to it. I love doing it. It's I wouldn't call myself a bike guy either.
Dude, I came in your shop. You have 200 bikes in there. You're a bike guy. Like, what are you talking about?
But you know what I mean? Like I'm not like super passionate about bike issues or anything like that. I love working on them, and I love working for myself. And the thing also that what happened is like, again, so this I applied the principles that I learned in AA to get to this point, right? Where it was like, okay, this is something that I want to do. I'll just start doing it.
Cool.
That easy.
Yeah.
I'll just start doing it and then see what happens. And then I start doing it, and then like this thing gets presented to me that can advance that or propel me forward a little bit in this area.
Yeah.
So I go, I'll do it, right?
Yeah.
And I just say yes. And then like something comes along and it's like, hey, I can help you form an LLC. Sure, let's do it. Boom, form an LLC. And then one thing at a time gets presented to me. I say yes to it.
Yeah.
And it slowly grows.
Yeah.
I outgrow my shed. I outgrow my warehouse space.
Yeah.
I move into a storefront, and it all was a process of like accepting what the universe presented to me.
I mean, that sounds like what the 12 steps is too, like saying yes to each step and being willing to kind of engage in it.
Oh yeah,
not
100%.
be scared. Take the opportunity before that window closes.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. And realizing also that I don't do it alone either, because I didn't get sober alone. But like along the way, people were willing to help me.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important for me to realize that, like, not to get too proud of myself in general, and realize that like it's all cooperative.
Yeah. Totally. That's what life's about.
Yeah.
So, can I shout out your bike shop?
No, because that would kind of like
break the
anonymity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I appreciate it. I would love the promotion, but
Well, I tell people to go here anyways.
Yeah.
Just when you need repairs done in New Orleans.
Maybe I'll sponsor the podcast somewhere.
Hey, okay. Well, that's been a great talk with Andy. You really taught me a lot about the 12 steps. I've heard about them. I have other friends that are going through them.
Yeah.
But, you're breaking them down and explaining them and kind of reflecting your personal experience on each one. Just help me understand not only where you're at, but where millions of people in the world are at, how they can take themselves out of a bad situation and heal themselves.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Should I not shout out your podcast then?
Well, no, because the podcast, I don't have like my actual name attached to it.
Okay, cool.
I've thought about that,
All right, yeah. So check it out. It's Recovery Friends.
Yeah.
With Andy.
Yeah, there's about maybe 40 episodes. I do intend on making more and releasing more. It's been a long time since I've released some, but I do intend to start releasing some more. I love doing it, so I shouldn't stop. So
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on Radical Health, my bro.
yeah, I'm glad to be here, bro. Thanks for asking me to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.